Sorry about that, people. That's the first time since we started viewing live that I've not been up here on time. All right. Good morning. Okay, you can dock my pay. How's everybody this morning? Okay. Who are you people? Did you ever, since this is the senior adult class, you ever get times where things just go blank? Please tell me you do. Okay. God's on the throne this morning. Good to have Brother Lingerfeld with us and Sister Kay. Brother, would you take us to the throne of grace, please? Yes. Amen. I trust everybody's had a great week. It's a time of year that we've all been waiting for. The temperature's dropping. But unfortunately, in a couple months, we'll be praying for the warm weather back. Unfortunately, that's the way we are, isn't it? I'm glad I started with, you ever have a moment that things just go blank? I just had one, brother. Your name? Okay, our missionary. Huh? No, okay, what, where you, huh? Okay, I had that right. Okay. He's going to come and, brother, would you take some questions? Now, be kind with the questions. Stick it to the mission field, because sometimes, brother, they're Baptist. Come on up, brother. You share what God's doing for you.
Pastor had already asked me to come during the church service, but he said, well, he wanted me to come also and say a word, and so because some of you won't be here during church service. Yeah, some of you will be teaching Sunday school probably. Some of you probably go home. I don't know, but anyway, we'll get them both ways, coming and going, right? I have my beautiful wife, Jan, with me, and this is the first time you've ever met her. As many times as we've been there, you knew my first wife, Gail. She was with us here many times over the years. But this is the first time Jan's been able to come. Brother Callen was the first pastor I had told I was engaged after we got engaged. Seems to be the last pastor who has met her, but we was able to come today. We just got back from Nicaragua, and we have not. Usually, when we come back for the purpose of reporting to our churches, and we have churches all lined up. But this was a different trip. It was more medical than anything else. So we really didn't have it lined up any churches, so I just said, well, I know where we need to go. And so we drove over from Fort Pierce this morning and wanted to come here and be with you folks because it's been a while, and y'all have never met her. And just tell you a little bit about Jan. She and I have known each other for 35 years. Well, since 1991, whatever amount of time that is. I think it's 35. But anyway, she and her husband started a church over in Dunedin on the West Coast the same year that I started the church in Fort Pierce, Riverview Baptist, where we're out of still today. And so her husband could sing. Any of you that know me and sit near me during the song service know I can't sing. I had a preacher friend, Brother Arlo Elam, as you probably know him. He used to, every opportunity he could, get up and tell everybody I couldn't sing. He says, "Don't sit by Paul Tipton unless you want to hear somebody can't sing." But anyway, he's a good friend, still is, over in Tampa. But Jan and I do that often too. I make the mistake of calling her Gail sometime. But after you've lived with one woman for 53 years, it gets to be a habit. She forgives me though. But she and I her husband could sing, and I would have him over to sing if we had a special meeting going on for something. A lot of times I'd ask him to sing. She'd come and play his piano for him because she was the only piano player he would sing by. So every time he came to sing, of course, he had to bring his wife. And so we got to be good friends over the years. And I hadn't seen her for 4 years. Her husband died in 2014. He died in China. They were actually on a cruise, but they were going over there for a purpose of him. He was going to be preaching at one of the underground churches there. But he got sick on that cruise, and they had to take him up. They took him ashore in Shanghai, dropped them off at the dock, and said, "See you later." And they took him to the hospital in an ambulance and found out that he had some kind of rupture inside. And I don't know all the details, but anyway, he didn't make it. They did surgery there, and he died 10 days later. She was there by herself. In China, no money because the hospital took it all and maxed their credit cards out and everything else. And she had no money, no friends, didn't know the language, and had no place to stay, and they wouldn't let her stay at the hospital. So she was in a fix. But Brother Bruce Turner, I don't know, you might know him, but he pastored over in Tampa, Westgate Baptist, and he, of course, they had called a lot of pastors and had her praying for her. He knew an underground pastor in China, and he got a hold of him, explained her situation. He sent 5 ladies from his church that could speak English and I keep wanting to say Spanish because that's why, but English and Chinese, they could speak fluent. So they came and they was her angels. She said that she didn't know what she had done without those ladies showing up. Just showed up at the hospital, and they saw her on the porch of the hospital because that's where she had been sleeping. And they say, "Are you Jan Morgan?" "Yes, I am." And so they gave her the details, and they helped her get a motel room, buy her some food, got her straightened out, even was served as interpreter between her and the doctors, and was there with her. Actually, they showed up, that was just before he died, didn't know if he was going to make it or not, but the doctors had already told her they didn't give him any high hopes, and of course he didn't. But they were there for her, and God took care of her, and she got home, and I went to the funeral, and of course you know how we get busy and all. I guess we should have kept up with her some, but we didn't. We just got busy, and she went about her business, and I just never seen her again. We prayed for her, but one Sunday night, I had to go to Bible Baptist Church in Newport Richey, Florida. They're a supporting church, and we went by to report to them and to preach. The Sunday morning that we went Sunday night, but that Sunday morning, Jan had just joined that church. And the pastor got up and announced that I was coming. Now, what Jan didn't know is my wife had died, and she didn't know about that, and so the pastor had reminded the church, and while announcing that I was coming, he reminded me my wife had just recently passed away, and so he just wanted them to be aware of that. And she was flabbergasted because, like I say, she and Gail were friends too, and she didn't know about that. But guess who was waiting for me when I got there? And over a period of time, God just worked it together and drew us together. I prayed if God wanted me to get remarried, she'd have to be a woman that believed like I believed and had the same convictions that I share. We had, and I sure didn't have time to train another woman. So if you don't send me one that's fully trained, I just go without one. But anyway, there she was, and it took us a little while to kind of get it worked out. When she first started asking me questions to see if I might be a little interested in getting married, I bailed. I'll be honest, I did. That was a little more than I wanted to talk to anybody about it at that time. So there were several months there that we didn't even talk. And during that time, she fell and broke a hip and had already gone through surgery and rehab by the time we started talking again. And then I felt bad that I wasn't there during that period. But God brought us together, and now we're married. Oh, I was supposed to talk about Nicaragua. Well, she went to Nicaragua, and everybody fell in love with her in Nicaragua. We got a 4-year-old girl on the property. It belongs to one of our pastors. And she can't say Sister Jan very well, but she sends her videos. She's got a cat that she's got now, and she hangs this cat on her back and holds it by the front paws and walks around the property and has her mama take videos and send them to Sister Jan. Because Sister Jan, and we left her with those cats. Last time we came, they'd just been born. So Sister Jan said, "Now, Nikki, you got to take care of these kittens because I got to go home, and I can't." So she said, "I will." So every day she had her mama make a video while she held up. There was 4 of them, and she held up each one of those kittens so Jan could see they was being well taken care of. And so she's fallen in love. We have started some churches up in the mountains in an area we had never intended to go. We have had churches in the mountains, have now, but not that far in the mountains. And we've got one 8 hours away from our property. We just purchased a piece of property for them. That man started the church, and it's not even been a year, and they're running 40 or 50 people, and you don't know where they're coming from because you don't look like nobody's living around there, but that mountain is full of people. And he knows every one of the houses and the people. He was born and raised there, and so he's started a church there now, and we preached a special service there before we came back, and we had bought him 40 chairs so he would have enough, and people were still standing around. I don't know how many were there, but it was well over 40 that day, and so we're going to be trying to build him a building soon. We had another pastor that had a piece of property when he came into our ministry, and he had a piece of property on the side of a mountain. And everybody there, if you're going to have a church, you're going to be on the side of a mountain. There's no level ground, and so I didn't know how he was going to build this church because it was so steep, and everybody walks uphill to get to the church, and they don't think anything in the world about it. It's a way of life when you're living there in the mountains like that. But we wasn't so accustomed to that, and especially Jan, after her hip surgery, she also, after we got married, actually developed some blood clots, and she's been dealing with them. Now we think that they're doing better, and pray for her. We got to go back. It's one of the things we're here to deal with. Is we're going to the doctor Friday. My doctor's Monday. Yours is Friday. Okay. They've seen some spots and dots on my lungs, and they want to check that out and see what it is. And so I've got to go for that, and she's got to go for her blood clots. And so I've been coughing a lot here lately. I think it's just a cigarette. No, I'm just teasing. I haven't smoked a cigarette since the day I got saved, and I was 22 years old then. But anyway, one doctor asked me if I had COVID, and I said I had, and she said, well, you just got something. Everybody that's had COVID and had a bad case of it, that's happening. These spots are showing up on their lungs. She says, but they haven't shown to be dangerous, and they eventually go away in most cases. She says, and that's probably what you're dealing with. That's probably what you'll find out. But my doctor wants me to go back and get the scan done again to see if there's been any changes. So I have to do that about every 6 months. So pray for us. But anyway, talking about that church that built on that steep mountain, the night that we went there to do the dedication, they had supposed to finish the church. They told me it would be finished. They was just putting on. Well, it rained all week that week. They didn't get to work on the church. And when we got there that Sunday night for that dedication, half the roof on the church had not been. The last thing they was put on was the roof, and half the roof had not been put on. And a lot of people were there, and we brought some people even from Managua. And so they had the chairs set up just like they were going to have, a service. And roof or no roof, we had service that night. Well, Jan sit just on the line where the roof had stopped. And it never gets cold in Nicaragua, except when you're in the mountains and it rains, and then it gets cold. To us, 50 degrees is freezing to death. Even in Florida, I'm freezing at 60. And so it was a little below 50 that night. It started raining, and she was sitting there getting wet. And I was up there in the dry part, and I was preaching. So, they were the ones getting wet, not me. Didn't hinder me any. Jan said I preached for an hour that night. Now, I know she exaggerated just because she was cold. But God is really blessing, and we're seeing great things happening there in Nicaragua. And it's just exciting to be a part of what God's doing. And this church helped us buy a van here. We needed another van transportation. We had a chance to buy a van. Another pastor was upgrading, and so he had this van. I knew the van, and I knew the van was in good shape. It just had an engine rebuilt in it. And so he told me he'd give us that van for $5,000. I said, sold. I don't have any money, but I'll buy it. So we sent some emails out, and one of them, of course, was to your church, and Pastor Callen sent us $1,000 back to buy that van. And with his help, we was able to buy that van. That within about 2 days, we could tell the pastor, all right, we've got the money committed, and so he just handed me the deed, signed everything over. We still hadn't given him the money, but we gave it to him as soon as it came in, and so we was able to do that. And we bought a church building, I think, since the last time we were here, and we had an opportunity to buy a building. It was already made, and we're already seeing that thing filled up. In fact, we had enough people to pretty well fill it up, meeting outside and start with. But God's blessed and gave us a great church building in a good place in town, and we don't have to build that one. But we do still have some churches that we haven't been able to build buildings for yet. And so you pray for us. We've got 2, I think, waiting for buildings. And so we need to pray and get those buildings built soon. But things are going well, and I just can't be going any better for us right now. Can't wait till we can get back down there. And of course, we are always in touch with people every day. When we're away, we were in touch with them, and they, if anything happens, any emergency, they always call me. So we don't have really any problems. We got great people, great men of God. That we train these guys ourselves, and so they're doing a great job. We don't have to worry about it, and we're not there, because I know that those guys are going to take care of things and do things right. So we never have a problem that way. All right. Anybody got any questions about the ministry? Over here. Okay. We started going to Nicaragua back. I started the church in Fort Pierce in '91. We had been there 25 years. I resigned the church. Well, actually, I had resigned earlier, but when I resigned the church, it's always been my policy, is pending the call of a new pastor. Meaning, I'm not going anywhere till you get somebody else to take my place. I want to be a part of that, and I want to make sure they had the right man. So we had resigned the church in 2015, but the first Sunday, 2016, was also the 25th anniversary of the church. We called a pastor, and that was his first Sunday as the new pastor. And so it was my last Sunday as the pastor, and we had our anniversary service that day. So it was a great day. But the first Sunday of 2016, did I say 2016? And so it's been 10 years now coming up that we've been actually on the field as full-time missionaries. I just spent a year raising our support to go. And how did we end up getting there? Well, Brother Jose Mexica, and I don't know if you've had Brother Mexica here or not. If you haven't, you probably will one day, because he gets around. He is now a missionary in Paraguay. But Brother Mexica had come over to Fort Pierce and helped us start a Spanish ministry over there. And during that time, he was helping us do that. He and I got to be good friends, and he said he had some property in Nicaragua. His wife was from Nicaragua. Brother Mexica is Puerto Rican, and he came to the country when he was 5 years old. But his wife and him ended up in Bible college together in Haines City, Landmark Baptist. And he had met her, and they ended up getting married after college. And he went to Nicaragua to meet her folks, ask for her hand in marriage, and he got such a burden himself for the country of Nicaragua. And so many kids living on the streets because they had nowhere else to live. Either their parents had died, or they had just neglected them, or whatever. It's not. The government has no facilities, nothing like that. They have, but the Catholic Church has a few children's homes in the country, and so Brother Mexica decided he was going to build a children's home there, and so he started that project. He bought 10 acres. Well, it actually bought some acreage at another place, but they decided they needed to be closer to the city, and so they ended up selling that and buying the 10 acres that he had, and he had started building buildings on it. He had built one dorm building, and he had built a little house, which is the house I live in now. It's double the size, but they had built that little house to have some place for the missionary to stay, whoever happened to be the one that would take over the children's home one day. And so, they got everything started, but then he started having some complications. Now, that was very involved, and I don't even know all the details myself, but they had to put that project on hold. I know some of it was government related, some of it was personal, and some other matters. But he would still go down to Nicaragua every chance he got, every 3 months or so, he would take a trip to Nicaragua, and he had developed some good friendships down there, and he had to have somebody on the property, because in Nicaragua, if you don't have somebody on your property, you don't have anything worth carrying off when you get back, because you've deserted it. They feel like you've deserted it. You don't want it no more. So it's rightfully anybody that wants it. And so he was paying a man to stay on the property, and he would go down there. So he was telling me, this is something he's sharing with me. I said, well, next time you go to Nicaragua, I'd like to go with you. I've always loved going to mission fields. I've been to many mission fields during my pastoring years, and we started 3 churches here in the state of Florida, and so that's what we were doing. And so anyway, Brother Mahika took me to Nicaragua. When I said that, about 3 days later, he was ready to go, and so we went, and I spent a week with him in Nicaragua, and God gave me a burden. I've been to many mission fields, and I always get a burden when I go, but it wasn't like that. It was, you go home, you get busy in your pastorate, and you just after a while you kind of, that goes by the wayside. But it didn't happen with this case. I couldn't get it off my mind. If you ever want to know if something is the will of God for your life, that's one way you can tell. Can you think of, if you can't think of anything else but that, pretty good indication God's wanting you to get your attention. And a missionary told me that, or an evangelist told me that many years ago when I was a young preacher, and he told me that, and I've always used that as kind of a go-to thing when you're questioning whether it's God's will or not. So I knew that was God's will for us to go. I set my wife down one day, Gail, and I said, honey, what would you think if I told you that I think God is calling us to move to Nicaragua, start a pastor school there, and teach them how to start churches in Nicaragua? And my wife looked at me like, that's a funny question. And I says, well, I just want to know what you think. And she says, did you say God was leading us to do that? I said, yeah. She said, well, then why are you asking me? I ain't got no say. If God says do it, we do it. And that's the way she was. That's the way Jan is too. She never thought she'd be a missionary, especially to Nicaragua. When first time she went to that country, she said, where in the world am I at? But you know what? She can't wait to get back. When we leave, can't wait to get back. Of course, while we're there, she can't wait to go home again. But no, it's not really. She's not that way. She loves the country, and they love her. They just fell right in love with her. And they love Gail, but, they knew God called her home. So, they were afraid that I would quit and come back home after God. I said, why in the world would I do that? I said, you don't quit your ministry because God takes your wife home. You just go get another wife. And God was good to me and gave me one kind of quick and one that believes like we believe and loves the people and loves our mission field. She probably is a little tired of rice and beans by now. The Nicaraguans eat rice and beans every day, every meal. They eat rice and beans for breakfast and beans and rice for lunch and gallo pinto for dinner. It's made out of beans and rice. So, and that's they're poor folk, and that's about the cheapest thing you need is beans and rice. And the thing is, they love it. They never get tired of it. We had to fly back this time out of Costa Rica because Spirit, we fly cheap. I do everything on the cheap if I can, and so we usually fly Spirit. And we had, gotten some points together there and Spirit, so we could fly for almost nothing because I had enough points accumulated, and I didn't even know how to use those points. I never even thought anything about. I didn't even know I had any points. And Jan, when we got married, she asked me about those points, and I said, "What points?" And so she investigated and found out I had over 80,000 points, and so she started taking care of that end. And so we could fly back and forth for almost nothing because I had all these points. But this time when we went, we couldn't book a return flight because they weren't going to be returning from Nicaragua. That was the last flight in, and they pulled out of Nicaragua. Now they're going to go back in for December and January because that's Christmas. But other than that, they pulled out. So we had all these points. I didn't want to buy an airline ticket on American Airlines, so I came up with this bright idea of going to Costa Rica. We border Costa Rica, and we're only 2 hours from the border. Of course, you got to drive another 5 hours to get to the airport. But I came up with this idea of flying out of Costa Rica with Spirit. So we checked that out. And that would work fine. Spirit's still flying in there, so we got a ticket to come back. And so we took a young man with us who is actually, I've been knowing him since he was 9 years old or 8 years old, and he's always called me Grandpa. The funniest thing, they called Gail, my wife Gail, all the children in the ministry called her Mom. And all the children in the ministry calls me Grandpa. I never figured that one out. But he's still today, though. He's 24 years old, already through university. He still calls me Grandpa. But he works there in our ministry. His dad is our our go-to pastor. He's the head pastor of all the ministry. And so I've gotten to the place where I don't drive as much in Nicaragua. I do all the driving here, but when I'm here. But Nicaragua is a crazy place to drive, and I just let him do the driving. And so he takes us everywhere we need to go, drives us, and he had never been out of the country in Nicaragua. And I said, "Well, you got to drive us to the airport in Costa Rica." So he got excited about that because he'd never been to Costa Rica. He's not so excited now, but he found. They drive in Costa Rica. It's like Costa Rica's got super highways like we do. Not as many, but they've got 4-lane interstate type highways over there, and people driving 100 miles an hour on them, and just like in Florida, And so he had the chance to go to Costa Rica. We almost canceled that flight, and he was a little disappointed because he wanted so much to go to Costa Rica. So we went to Costa Rica and flew in this time. But yeah, we started as Christians. A pastor school. I don't call it a college because we're not given degrees. We're not going through all this stuff with the registering with the state and everything. We're just teaching these guys what they need to know to pastor a church. And so what we find in Nicaragua, most of them are so messed up on their doctrine. Catholic Church is not a problem. In fact, I don't mind getting a few Catholics in every now and then. They're pretty easy to train because they've never been taught anything anyway. But a lot of these guys are Pentecostal backgrounds, and so they get saved, and they think you can get saved and lost again, and saved and lost again. And they've got all kind of things you have to get out of them before you can get anything in them. You have to empty them before you can fill them up again. And so the most important thing is we make sure they get their doctrine straight. we get them straightened out doctrinally, and then we continue on teaching them the mechanics of pastoring and so forth. And then if God leads them, I don't call men to preach, and I don't lead them to where they should go. That's not my department. That's God's business. But if God calls them to preach, and God puts a place on their heart, and they've completed our training, then we will help them. We'll go out and visit with them. You know, once they get this idea of soul winning, man, I tell you what, you just turn them loose and let them go. They'll do the job, but we have to be there to direct them. And their biggest need is money. You know, and that's where a missionary comes in. They don't. Most of them, they work for less than $50 a month, and some of them can't find jobs at all after the COVID. A lot of the companies that closed down, the manufacturing companies that was owned by other countries, they were having so much trouble with the government anyway. They just didn't come back. The people didn't come back. The owners of them, the buildings just sitting vacant. So there's a lot less jobs in there. Of course, Biden kind of helped take some of that, labor away from Nicaragua. They couldn't find a job anyway, so Biden gave them a job. And, well, he gave them money anyhow. I don't know if they had to work for it. I think he just come over and get it. And Trump's still trying to get most of them back to Nicaragua. He's not having much success in Nicaragua, but these guys, they start serving God, and then if God lays it on their heart, they'll work in our churches, one of our churches, for a period of time, and then we'll help them. If we feel like that, they've demonstrated to us a true calling on their life, and they have a burden, and they're willing to work, and not just relying on everybody else to do it, then we'll get behind them and help them. And we'll try to help give them some property. Once we get a piece of property, then we'll start trying to help get a building on it. And I live on my Social Security. Well, me and her lives on our Social Security. Between the two of us, it probably not enough for the common person to live on. But I rent my house out in Fort Pierce, and that goes in the ministry, and all the support that we raise goes in the ministry, and we have to raise money, additional money all the time to build buildings and things of this nature. But God's blessing the ministry, and I'm the only missionary over there that I know of that lives among the people. Most of your missionaries go to Nicaragua, and they'll rent them a house in a gated community where they'll have a swimming pool and a guard at the gate. And even a maid and a gardener usually comes with the deal. And they don't go out in the boonies and the areas that we go into. Even they won't even go into them, and we live there among them. And I've never one time been threatened. In the 10 years we've been there, I've never felt threatened in the least. They always tell me when I talk to them, sometime I run into some of these missionaries at the airport coming and going, hey, why don't you come to our side of town? We could use some help over here. He says, it's not safe over there. And I say, what's not safe about it? People used to ask Gail, my first wife, we would go in churches and ladies would say, don't you feel uneasy? Do you not feel safe in Nicaragua? Nicaragua is one of the safest countries you can go to. For a communist third world country, they're a safe country. They're pretty well policed. They got a lot of police. They don't pay them anything, and they are always shaking everybody else down. Like they stopped me when I was driving. They would stop me for crimes that wasn't even on the books, but they was wanting me to pay them $20 to keep getting a ticket.